So sometimes you think that the insanity of the world cannot get any worse, and well, you stumble upon on Monday morning, no less, where the headlines like this one: Toddler is kicked out of nursery. You might be wondering for which reasons. I don't know. Maybe he said a bad word, or he began to run with scissors, or he made some kind of obscene drawing. I don't know. Anything that can happen with toddlers nowadays. But this one was special. Kicked out of nursery for being transphobic, as families blast school's insanity. I mean, I have questions. A toddler has been kicked out of nursery after being accused of transphobia, new figures reveal. The child was age either 3 or 4. Of course, the identity it has been not being disclosed. Was suspended for, and I quote, abuse against sexual orientation and gender identity. Data from the Department of Education shows. This is in the UK. Statistics indicate 94 pupils at similar primary institutions were suspended. 94, almost 100 pupils were suspended or permanently excluded for transphobia or homophobia in the same year. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is exclusive to the UK. We have seen things like this in France, the same in the Netherlands, in the United States as well. It's not going to lie, this is something that is still happening, but we did not have like an actual report from an actual, government institution confirming this stuff happening. This includes 10 pupils from year 1 and 3 from year 2, where the maximum age was 7, and 1 child was of nursery age. Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters, says, every once in a while, the extremes of gender ideology throw up a story that seems too crazy to believe, and a toddler being suspended from nursery for so-called transphobia or homophobia is one such example. I mean, I want to know, what do they mean by this? As in, if we are talking about 3 or 4 years of age, it means that he did not, I think that he misgendered somebody, or he denied, I'm saying he, I'm implying that it's a he, implied that there are only 2 genders or 2 sexes. Maybe that was the thing. And by the way, I need to wrap up my mind around the fact that you're in nursery, you're 3 or 4 years old, and you're still in that phase of our lives in which it is so important to form the emotional scaffolding, your emotional scaffolding, and you are being forced to understand something that is way beyond your comprehension. Why is there some kind of, it's like this confusion that has to start at a very young age, because that's the way that they are essentially controlling the youth nowadays, confusing them from an extremely young age. As they say, I'm not gonna say babies, but at some point people have spoken about babies already knowing that they are what they are not. I know, but maybe at that age you can pretend that you're a dinosaur. Then if you are 3 years of age and you pretend that you're a dinosaur, what to do in that case? Do you change your ID or something, your birth certificate, to comply with the fact that you decide that you are a dinosaur? I mean, being a dinosaur would be cool, right? Especially one of the carnivores, of course. But well, teachers and school leaders involved in this insanity should be ashamed of themselves for protecting adult concepts and projecting adult concepts and beliefs on to such young children again. And we are talking about like a penalization, right? Like this punishment that was kicked out. Can you imagine? Even in the sense that it is hard for 3 or 4 years old to grasp reality. Can you imagine how the other kids could feel about this? And at the same time, can you imagine how is that environment for them? How toxic can be that environment for them? I can't wrap my head around that. I cannot. That's why time and time again, I've told you, it's like, it's something that it's going to be really controversial for many people. But taking your kids to nursery, having your kids in nursery, having your kids in it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. It's you're gonna tell me, Jesus, is very hard for families. Maybe both have to work. Well, the dad and the mom have to work, and they have to leave. I'm gonna tell you. I'm going to just, as a friend, it's always gonna be a bad idea. It's always gonna be a bad idea, especially from ages 0 to 4. I would say from ages 0 to 5 to give it some leeway. From ages 0 to 4, ages 0 to 5, nobody besides the mother or the father should be involved in, well, the raising and the nurturing of the kid. It's that simple. It's an extremely delicate phase in which we are building our emotional scaffolding, and the only one who can help us build that is our mothers. It's that simple. I don't make the rules. This is something that exists. This is something that is real. You cannot avoid this. I understand people are sometimes in a bad situation. They have to make sacrifices. But the problem is that I see is any sacrifice that you're making is not worth jeopardizing the emotional well-being of your kids. And when I say jeopardizing the emotional well-beings of your kids, I'm talking about that this is gonna have scars for life. So no, it's not worth it. Like I don't see any scenario in the having such young kids at nursery is a good idea. No. The child age either 3 or 4 was suspended for abuse against sexual orientation and gender identity. What the F? Across all primary schools and state schools, the number of pupils suspended or expelled for homophobic or transphobic behavior increased from 164 in 2021 to 22 to 138 in 2022 to 23. I don't think that they become more transphobic. I think that the teachers, if we can call them like that, or whatever those nursery people are called, I think they are become more deranged. The largest number of suspensions for this reason was in Essex with 16, followed by Birmingham 15. Figures began in the 2020 to 21 academic year. That is quite recent. Maybe it's because maybe they began classifying these transphobic attacks in literally toddlers from that year onwards. You know that so many things in so many parts of the world have become worse as time goes by. And I don't think that saying that the woke mind virus, I think that is an understatement. Laura Young, director of the Free Speech Union, said, I would have thought that if your ideology is so rigid, it justifies you punishing toddlers for not complying with it. That's a powerful argument for discarding it in favor of something less dogmatic. I would say that discarding it altogether. You don't have to replace it with anything else. The Department of Education said all pupils and staff should feel safe and protected at school and should never face violence or abuse. The Education Secretary has been clear that she expects school leaders to enforce good behavior, and we are committed to a comprehensive program of behavior support for schools. Our plan for change sets out our relentless focus on making sure every child gets the best life chances. You know how a child gets the best life chances? Staying at home with mom. It's something you could say, oh, Jesus, you are so sexist. No, it's common sense. I'm telling you, I'm trying to tell you in the friendliest way possible. It is my suggestion that this is not nowadays. It's not working. Nowadays it's not working. I don't know. Maybe it was always a bad idea. We can never be sure what happens in those nurseries, in any of those nurseries. And nowadays, oh, you can say, oh, but I was in a nursery like 30 years ago and nothing happened to me. Yeah, but 30 years ago we did not have the levels of insanity that we have today. You have to consider that. So my suggestion is that, well, you pay attention to what's going on, even if this can sound so clickbaity and outrageous, because it absolutely is in some ways, but it's happening. It's something that is, nobody's making this up. This is from an actual numbers and statistics of the Department of Education in the UK. Sally and Nigel Rowe, whose sons attended a church and England school, said they received a letter from the head teacher and chair of governors with declared pupils could be designated the term if they showed an inability to believe a transgender person is actually a real female or male. Why are kids into this? Why are kids having to be forced this? They claim the letter also added that refusing to use a transgender pupil's adopted name or gender-appropriate pronouns will be considered transphobic behavior. No. Again, this is something I'm telling you. I am telling you, we need to fight back. And maybe one of the ways to fight back is not precisely forcing them to change their behavior. The people who run these nurseries. Maybe is that we need to advise. We need to make better conditions so parents can afford to have their kids at home for 4 or 5 years before sending them to elementary school, because that's the way that things should be, and especially nowadays. But I would like to know what you think about this in the comments. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Body Language Guy. Much love and bliss.